Call the meeting to order, and we're going to ask Commissioner Goddard to do the invocation and Commissioner Pickens to lead us in the pledge.
If you will. Lord, thank you so much for allowing us to be here. Thank you so much for working on our county, Lord. I know sometimes you give us these hard decisions, and then you ask us to pray for your wisdom to make these hard decisions, Lord. And we just ask that we do what honors you, we honor with this county, and we do what's right by the people, Lord. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Goddard and Commissioner Pickens. Before we get into public comment this morning, I've asked our General Services Director to come forward and give us a brief synopsis on how we got here, from where this started and the dates and the timeline and why it's taken this long. And so I asked her to prepare this only this morning. So thank you for that, Ms. Young, and please proceed.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
I have a brief timeline with just the dates and the milestones to bring you up to date with the history of this project. In September of 2019, the county received a report from FDOT and AERS documenting the deficiencies and stating that the bridge was going to experience a reduced weight limit. October 3rd, 2019, the Public Works Department posted those weight limit restrictions as required. October 8th, we had a workshop to discuss alternative options and further explore additional options with all parties. We met with designers, of all designers. We met with Veritas Steel. We talked about temporary bridges. We talked about changing approaches. We've explored numerous options through various workshops.
Pull that to you some.
Yes, sir. On October 29th, 2019, after conversations with FDOT, we held a special called workshop to gain approval from the BOCC to petition the FDOT to take funding from the Holloway and apply it to the County Road 309D and County Road 310 bridge projects. In November and December, we had to wait on FDOT to provide the official funding agreement and the authorization to take those funds from the Holloway project and place them over here. During those months, staff continued to meet and explore options to find the most expedient resolution once the funding was released. Staff was not authorized to do any official work which would have an expenditure until FDOT produced that actual funding agreement for us to sign. That was received by the county in January, and on January 7th, 2020, we had a special called workshop to gain consensus from the BOCC and to execute that funding agreement. On January 10th, the RFQ was issued to procure the design professional in order to establish the bridge design. On January 15th, an RFQ pre-bid meeting was held with all responsive designers. January 24th, we closed the RFQ. January 27th, we had the initial evaluation meeting. January 29th, we had the firms present and a final evaluation meeting was held. And February 4th, here we are today, we have a special called meeting in order to approve rank order of those designers. And we are proposing, assuming rank order is approved, to have a final negotiated contract with that design firm back for you on Tuesday.
Okay, is there any questions about the timeline yet? Okay, would you mind turning around and handing that piece of paper to Sarah right there with the newspaper? And I would like to invite you, the newspaper, the next time y'all decide to write an editorial that's completely inaccurate in all aspects of it, would you please call someone down here and at least get the facts? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question for point of clarification?
Sure.
Was that an invitation to write an inadequate article?
No, it was right adequate.
Okay.
Accurate.
An accurate.
You said I want to invite you next time you want to write
Adequate
an
and
article.
accurate.
Okay. I got it.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Young. Public comment. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters and attention to the board. It is not reasonable to expect the board will engage in debate or deliberation about matters on which the board has received no prior information as part of the agenda. please limit to 3 minutes. Public comment cards are conveniently placed at the meeting room entrance and should be submitted prior to the meeting to the deputy clerk, who sits to the right of the podium. And with that, I'm going to call my first speaker, Mike Perry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here today to invite the honorable members of this board to an event that's going to happen this Saturday at the Skeet Club. It's the 5th annual Rhoda Heaver Boys Ranch Skeet Shoot. The reason I wanted to let this commission know and let the staff and Mr. Smith know that it's taking place this Saturday is because every one of our commissioners have been, in your unofficial capacity, have been supportive of the mission and the ministry of Rhoda Heaver Boys Ranch. And we would love to have you come join us. We'll begin at 9 o'clock, have breakfast, and we're also going to have serve lunch. If you care to shoot with us, that's fine. We'll have a place for you. But just wanted to say thank you for your continued support of the ranch and what it stands for. And I wish you a good morning, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mike, for the invitation. By the way, I plan on being there.
You're a ringer though, aren't you?
No, I'm the worst one on my team. Okay, next speaker is Paul Adamsack.
Morning, Paul Adamsack, 150 Spooner Road, Hawthorne, Florida, 32640. I'm just here, I hear a lot about the Bardin Bridge, and I just want to talk about the 310 bridge a little bit. Just curious if we have any updates on that. I know there was a little bit of stuff that was posted on the web. Just curious where we are with that. I know Mr. George Buzzard came in and talked about the bridges coming down 21, which is within our county, where the signs have been removed from that for the weight limits. That still holds true today. So what is the weight limits of the 21 bridge? And then there's another bridge on 315 that comes from Marion County. That one as well is unmarked at this time. That is in Marion County, but just off the edge, literally 100 yards from the border. I'm just curious what the status is of that, because right now we have trucks coming right down through downtown Interlochen, making the right there, coming down County Road 21 into that big construction area. And I just think long term that's a recipe for disaster. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Tim Hotelling.
Good day, Tim Hotelling, San Mateo. I'd just like to bring to your attention in some of the conversations that I've witnessed in the past on this Bardin Bridge thing, there was this conversation as to how y'all were going to approach it from a contracting point of view. And there appeared to be a considerable amount of discussion as to whether you could legally approach it from what they call a bid build approach, where you tell somebody that's built bridges, I need to put a bridge across this span and this is what we know about what we've got, and go to it, versus what we're doing now where you're bidding out for the engineering and then telling the company to comply by what the engineers say rather than what their picture is. There was quite a bit of discussion as to whether it was more efficient and whether or not it was more economical. And doing a little research, both the FDOT and the U.S. Department of Transportation have done long studies on it. One study in particular identified it saved over $6 million and 600 days in a project, which means that it's worthy of your time and attention. But most importantly today, I'd like to bring to your attention that the county has in fact engaged in this bid build process when they put that $2 million or whatever it is, the poop pipe that ran up along Highway 17 out to Paradise Point, and the actual connections to the residents. The water management, whatever they are, water management guys, demanded and required that it be used on a bid build process because of the timeliness concerns. And I just, no opinion, there is a lot of it says sometimes this is the best way to go and sometimes the other's best way to go. I'm just wanting to say that we've done it and it's legal.
Tim, I sent you an answer to this on the email, so I'll reiterate what that email said. It basically said there's nothing wrong with a design build process at all. And if it fits the project, I'll be on board with it faster than anybody. For instance, with the new animal shelter coming up in the not too distant future, that may be the perfect place to use it. And the reason is, number one, it's not state money, so we don't have to follow DOT rules. The DOT specifies in statute that we hire a design professional to come up with a basis for the bid before we can send it on to the design build firm. And so it would take longer in this case. Nothing has ever been proven that design build saves money and time if you have to put that additional step in there. So that was what the conversation previously was about. I'm trying real hard not to let this meeting today digress into all we've talked about in the past, but to move forward. The reason for this meeting, I'll let you speak, I swear I will. The reason for this meeting this morning is very simply to approve the rank order of the engineers that have been recommended to us through the process of our procurement. This is what has to happen, the next step. So if we could close that bridge, and like we're gonna do 310 at some point, it would save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars if we could close that bridge. But that's not an option if there's any way we can design and build it to make that thing work.
May I?
Yes, sir.
I was bringing to your attention in regard to comments, just like you said that it was illegal, that by the law there's a specific exemption that allows the direct use of that, and the county has in fact used that, and on that proposal that you authorized, it has like 4 pages of quotations of the law that says this is legal to do. So I'm not in any way suggesting that what's going on today is going to have a bump in the road. I'm just wanting to make sure that you all know that there appears to be some confusion, and I was really impressed with the intensity and the quality of information provided by DPW when they presented this process to you guys and you approved it back in March of 19. So it's not like you're having to recreate it, and it is legal, and FDOT itself says that they save money. So it's just for your digestion. I understand that you're down the road on this engineering, and that's up to you, and I have no opinion on it, but it'd be worthy of you to DOT seems to be excited about it, that's all.
Well, yes, sir, and again, I'll reiterate that the design build process has a lot of merit on certain cases. I just don't think this is one of them.
And emphasis on certain cases, yes, sir.
I think so, and you know, as I mentioned a minute ago, I think the perfect one to try this on, or another one to do it on, I'm sure they've done it in the past, would be the animal shelter. And the reason why is Commissioner Rawls is working with the Animal Services Committee right now to try to come up with a basis of design, with a floor plan and kind of some type of a basis of design. That would be a perfect.
Yeah, you just say we need 5 wash houses and 3 kennels and go to it.
Whatever they say, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Build it out with the cheapest material you can find that's still good without dropping quality. That'd be a perfect, because we have a basis for design. We don't have a basis for design on this bridge, so we'd have to hire somebody to come up with a basis for design. We can't expect our General Services Department to come up with a basis for the design for the bridge. So that's why this commissioner voted at the last meeting to bring it forward under this route.
I'm not arguing what you did, but it seems to me if you have to hire an engineer, somebody's got to have to design it, and it seems to me that there's probably more than one way to run some iron across that creek, but in any event, that's all. I just wanted y'all to digest it.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Rawls?
Mr. Hotelling, if you would. So the information that you're alluding to was actually an internal study that was done by the Florida Department of Transportation.
Correct.
And at the top of the study, the question was whether or not design build had any advantage over design bid build, and the answer, which was the second line, was yes. On a $62 million project, it saved over $6 million and over 600 days of time. So the answer to the question is, in all cases, design build is going to be cheaper, more efficient, and less costly, and it reduces the risk to the owner, which is the county.
The biggest thing that I saw is the liability transfers to the counselor.
Risk, exactly.
Because you're not caught with where the builder says, well, the architect told me to do it this way, and the architect said, well, the owner, the county told me to do it this way, and I've just seen that out where they're putting a road in front of my house where the water pipe's going through, and road guys are saying that big tree's going to die because the county made us put this 6-inch water main right through the roots.
Well, let me finish what I was saying, though. That study was tied to a study that was done by the Federal Highway and Traffic Safety Administration.
The federal had
which had a
7 years of study, just
and
all
their
kinds
study
of projects.
said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But if you couple it with the fact, and I sent all this stuff to staff, there is a meeting being held on the 22nd, I believe, of April in Texas, where the Design Build Institute of America is having governmental agencies go in there, and there's one specific area that's tied to traffic and air transportation for design build. So I agree with you. I think that this county really should embrace the opportunity to take a look at design build. It's being utilized more and more, not just by governments, but by private as well. And there is a substantial savings to the public if we were to do that. But at this time, this bridge, this ship is already sailed. We got to get on with this because today we're going to select rank order. So it's
okay.
Thank you.
But I agree with you.
Whatever.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, sir. Okay, next is the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull an item from the consent agenda? Commissioner Pickens?
No.
Commissioner Harvey?
No.
Commissioner Goddard?
No.
Commissioner Rawls?
Item B?
B?
B, yes,
B,
sir.
okay. With that being said, the chair will entertain a motion for item A on the consent agenda.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda item A.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, item B, Commissioner Rawls.
What I'm looking for is, I'd like to get some history on where we are with this project, because it was let out before I got elected, obviously. There's been money spent on it to date, and now I believe the original contract was north of 100,000, maybe 125,000. And we're looking to approve another 117, is that correct?
No.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
I don't have the original contract in front of us because this item is a separate and independent item. So what I can tell you is that the item before you today is the work to replace that failing culvert at the Boys Ranch Road, which is time sensitive. It has to be done before the water levels rise, which will begin on March 1st and then will continue throughout. And so in light of the failing culvert that is in dire need of replacement, we issued the solicitation in order to get that work accomplished, and the bid award, or the lowest bid received, was $117,000 some change.
There's an $87,000 shortage mentioned at the bottom of the recommendation. you got, it says there's a balance of $29,793 in the original budget line. So if I add the 29 and 87, was that the original budget?
I don't believe so, but again, that's a separate issue I don't have in
From
front of
memory,
me.
it was around 120, I think, somewhere in there. It wasn't over 130, but.
I didn't remember it being that large, but again, I don't have that in front of me. We can get it to you, though, if you want me to email it to you.
My question, my concern is, what was done with the original money?
I can get the details of that for you and send you an email out with all of that information.
Okay, so we don't have a clue what happened to the better part of $80,000.
I'm sure I have a clue, but recalling those details on the spot was not something I brought with me today. Today's issue is the award of this bid, if you'd like to award it.
If you could send me a copy of, I'd just like to know the history,
Sure.
what's been spent, and where we
Be
are
happy to
today.
send that email to you.
Because we have the concrete pipe in place, correct? Sitting on the side of the road.
Yes, the concrete pipe is there, which this bid did take into account to use the pipe that was existing. So they are not buying materials.
Any idea what the value of that pipe is right now?
I don't have an idea of the value of
Okay.
that pipe.
Commissioner Harvey,
She answered my question. I'm sorry. I left.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Goddard.
Yeah,
Can't-
when did you get this paperwork, Commissioner?
Same time you did.
But couldn't you have asked her these questions prior to this? It seems like you do this every time. You don't do your homework, and you bring it in here, and then you call them up to answer questions that you could have got answered way back. It's like you do this all the time. I just wonder, do you get this at the same time the rest of us do? We all do our homework. We ask all our questions so that when we sit up here, we're all ready to go, and then you're asking questions that could have been asked way back here. I don't get it.
I'll answer your question. So what I'm trying to do is get as much out for the public information as possible to be put on the public record.
No, sir, I believe you're making a show out of it. That's what I believe it is. These questions I'm sorry, but these questions could have been answered.
Mr. Goddard,
Thank you.
I don't know what you
Both
ate for
commissioners,
breakfast or what you
please,
had for dinner last
please,
night.
both commissioners, please.
You don't want to take me on this issue. This is a public information issue. There's no reason why the public cannot have the information in front of them. It's a simple request of staff just to put this out for public consumption. This is their money we're spending.
All right, commissioners, thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval of item B on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Can we
may
do
I
the
say-
executive session at the end, or does it have to be during the middle of the meeting?
It's not necessarily when it has to be, but what happens is you have to announce it as you open in a public meeting, and then after the executive session closes, you have to go back into a public meeting to adjourn.
Okay, we are going to have an executive session somewhere shortly, but I have another few comments to make before we lose our crowd. And then we'll come back after that and close out the meeting after the executive session. I'm going to go ahead and ask for the clerk. Does he have any comments this morning?
I have none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. County Administrator Suggs.
Yes, sir, just one really, and it's very brief. I want to go ahead and mention we're getting ready to start the budget process, as everybody knows. And so we'd like for the commissioners to go ahead and start thinking of some of the expectations you would like for us to consider this year when we start prepping for the budget. I would imagine some of those considerations will be the millage, and if we do anything for staff, and if there's any capital projects that you'd all like to see move forward. So if you'll start thinking about that, we'd like to have a follow-up conversation with our 5 elected officials before we get with our department heads. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Suggs, would you like for us, as in years past, to come sit with you before time certain and kind of go over what we individually would like to see done?
I think that would be a great idea if we could go ahead and get those scheduled in the next week or so. That'd be great. I'd like to go ahead and start prepping and getting ready for the process.
So by the end of February, you'd like for all of us
I'd like to start it sooner than that if at all possible.
No, but I mean end by the end of February.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Commissioner Rawls.
First of all, I'll say thank you for getting this started early. With regards to the strategic plan, we don't have that finished up yet. how is that going to equate, how is that going to figure into the ultimate equation in this year's budget? Because part of the goal of the strategic plan was to lay out projects that we could look at over the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years. And
The strategic planning session, we had hoped to have it completed by now. The young lady that was assisting in the second phase, which is the staff surveys, had to have unscheduled surgery, and so it's been delayed by a couple more weeks. We hope to have that process finished in the next 30 days or so. But so all this conversation with the commissioners is to give us kind of a roundabout idea of what you think you might like to see moving forward on some of the big ticket items, and then what we'll do is we incorporate whatever comes out of the strategic planning session in the details.
And the other thing was the strategic plan for the fire service. That's going to obviously be a big conversation piece this year as well.
I'm not going to be able to answer that question for you, Commissioner. The fire service is going to be a difficult conversation if we're going to have multiple conversations with not only the folks in that service, but also with the 5 elected officials. I'm not going to be able to schedule my timeline of getting a budget prepared for the commission around that discussion. The question goes to,
we'd requested a third-party independent person to come in, or group to come in and look at it. So is that going to be considered during the budget process this year, or?
We will bring back those potential opportunities to the commissioners for your approval when that time is right. We're out seeking those type of individuals now that might be able to come in and assist us in the process and getting those cost figures in. Once we get all that information, we'll bring it back to the 5 elected officials for your review and approval.
Okay.
You have your button on?
I did, but my question was answered.
Okay, no problem. All right, so thank you, Administrator Suggs. Colonel Commando, do you have anything other than the executive session?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so I want to go on and do a quick round of comments. Paul, unless you have something that's very important here, the public comment is over, but what would you like to? You waited what? Until you go into your executive session.
You can't be here.
You can't be here for an executive session. Well, you have an opinion? Okay, well, you can come to the podium and address it to Mr. Commando right there.
Hi, Mr. Commando.
Dear Colonel.
So, I was reading through Attorney General Butterworth, which was the state of Florida. I'll just read this into the record and then I'll walk away. The exemption which applies to collective bargaining by local governments is contained in section 447.605, as you guys noted. Florida statute specifically addresses meetings between the negotiating committee, which in this case I'm not sure you have one, and the city commission or county commissioner, county administrator in this case. However, as discussed above, these meetings are intended to provide direction and information from the public employer to the committee regarding its position on pending collective bargaining issues. The purpose of the exemption is to allow the governmental entity to develop and communicate an effective negotiating strategy, which will then be used in open negotiating sessions. The exemption from open meetings in section 447.605 Florida statutes specifically applies to meetings between the chief executive officer and legislative body for the municipality as they develop strategies for bargaining. However, it would be counterproductive to allow strategy development meetings between the committee and the city commission in private, but then require the members to be held in public when further discussion and strategy is necessary among themselves. This is not to suggest that collective bargaining negotiations between the representatives of the city and the bargaining agent may be closed. Florida statutes require that these meetings be held in compliance with the government in the Sunshine Law, rather in furtherance of the policy expressed in 447.605. Florida statutes that the city or county in this case be allowed to develop its labor negotiations policy in private for use in public negotiation session. The members of the Labor Negotiations Committee, which I don't believe we have, representing the interests of the city or county, may meet in private to formulate their position. Therefore, it is my opinion that the exemption from the government in the Sunshine Law contained in section 447.605 Florida statutes would extend to meetings of the negotiating committee held to discuss labor negotiation strategies. In light of the conclusion, it would be appropriate for the negotiating committee held to discuss labor negotiation strategies. In light of this conclusion, it would be appropriate for the negotiating committee to adjourn during ongoing collective bargaining negotiations and hold a caucus among committee members to determine the strategy to be employed in ongoing negotiations. Further, it would be appropriate for the members of a labor negotiating committee to meet to discuss among themselves labor negotiation strategies for use during public collective bargaining negotiations. My question is, do we have a committee?
Yes.
Is the committee of the Board of County Commissioners?
Excuse me?
Is the committee of the Board of County Commissioners?
They're part of it.
So is the entire committee here for the meeting?
I don't know. Mr. Rach? Is the entire committee here?
As far as the labor committee, they will be, yes, unless they were excused for prior meetings or absence.
Okay.
All right, I just want to say also for the record that Paul, from now on, when you have comments like this to make, would you please make them under public comment?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
In the past meetings, when subjects came up, you waited till then, so.
Well, yes, sir, but I would appreciate it if in the future meetings, we're trying to do public comment under public comment. And then if a commissioner wants to engage with somebody over something, that's up to that commissioner.
Sure.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Who is our committee? I'm just becoming aware of this.
We need to cover, I think it'd be better to cover this in the executive session, or is it okay to do it now, Rich?
I think it's fine.
It's okay to say who's on the committee.
You've got your county administrator, you've got your Chief Quinn Romay, you've got Deputy County Administrator Matt Reynolds, you've got Ms. Gee Holder from Fire Rescue, you've got Lori Parker from HR, and you've got Ms. Tabitha Lasser as our paralegal, and you've got Russ Castleberry as outside counsel. And Rich, I apologize.
Okay.
Good enough?
I just
Okay.
didn't know. I've never heard the committee before, so. I don't know.
Well, all right, with that, I'm going to quickly ask two things before we move into executive session. One of them is the Palatka Women's Club sent an email that asked any commissioners that wish to come in on Friday, February 28th at 11 o'clock in the morning. They want to hand us a proclamation request, and they want a photo of whoever shows up that morning. So everyone is welcome to show up. The other one was at our last workshop meeting, a transportation meeting, a resident came to us and asked us to give him a letter from Putnam County that said that we did not have a problem with them putting a light in at 207, and that we were at Cracker Swamp Road, and we also were against them closing off the median in that area, as the letter said. Well, we wrote them a letter, and DOT came back and said that language was not adequate, that we couldn't say that we had no problem with putting a light there, that they wanted the language in there that Putnam County Board of County Commissioners unanimously agrees the red light at Cracker Swamp Road and 207 is a priority. I felt like as chairman that I couldn't sign that letter without direct consensus again from the board, because that's not what we discussed that day in the meeting. We discussed that we said we would not have a problem with them putting a light in there, not that it becomes a priority. My concern is if we say that's a priority, our pot is this big and it holds so much money.
That's right.
And if we call this a priority, something other is going to come out of, that money's going to come out of our pot of DOT money and go to this instead of another project that may have been in the making for years.
That's right.
So I need some direction on what the board wants to do with this letter. You want me to sign it and make it a priority? Do you want me to tell the resident that we're not going to do it under these terms? I just need the board to either give me the authority or not give me the authority, or massage the language and see if DOT would like it or whatever. Commissioner Rawls.
I personally don't have a problem saying that it's a priority. I do think it's necessary, and I've had concerns about that for a couple of years myself. But I agree with what you're saying. Are you saying that there's a direct impact on like scop or scrap money? Because that is a state road. Would we have any?
I don't know if it would do scop or scrap. What it would do is the projects other than that, the DOT is gonna spend money in the county, you're gonna get so much money.
You know, with the expansion of East Palatka and the growth they're going through, we're getting, everybody comments about traffic in Palatka and Putnam County, and it's.
I'm okay either way. I just
I
didn't feel
would
like I had
support
the authority to sign this without consensus from this board, direct consensus from this board, because it's a different change from what was approved at the last meeting.
I would have no problem with it.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of concur with Commissioner Rawls on this and also with you, and I appreciate you bringing it up. I think it's necessary. I don't think it's a priority. And I think that we need to reiterate to DOT that it's their road, and we support a light there. We feel like it's necessary, but surely we do not want to put it as a priority to reduce funding from other projects.
So maybe change the word priority to a necessary project, something
Yes,
along those lines?
That would be a fit. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Goddard?
That was basically
Okay.
exactly what I wanted to.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Massage the wordage a little bit. Not a priority, but a necessary project.
Necessary instead of a priority, okay. Got it. You clear enough, Laura? Okay.
Already got it? You already wrote the letter?
Wouldn't surprise me if she brought it up here and had me sign it. Okay, and we'll, if the commissioners will allow, we'll do the rest of the commissioner requests after the session, if that's okay. Suits everybody?
Are we going to go to another room, or are we going to stay here?
Yes, we're going to go in another room and have an exec, so we're going to recess the Board of County Commission meeting at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, can I just, because there was that public comment that was just brought up, and I didn't have any.
I'm going to reopen the meeting at this time.
And I apologize for that. The Attorney General's opinion that was being referenced appears to be AGO 99-27, and I think the important part that wasn't disclosed as part of the comments was the opinion that under section 447.605 subsection 1 Florida statutes, a committee formed by the city manager in that case to represent the city in labor negotiations, and here's the important part, may participate in a closed executive session to discuss labor negotiation strategy. So even under the information that was provided to you, there's nothing that's inappropriate or contrary to Florida law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, Paul, we're not going to go into discussion over this.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Excuse me?
And I'm happy to talk to you about it afterwards. We don't want to delay this.
Thank you, and we're going to recess the meeting at this time and go into executive session. Reconvene the work. Is this a workshop? No, special called meeting.
Special called meeting.
Okay, I'm going to reconvene our specially called meeting. I guess Commissioner Harvey suggested adding this language to the letter. Putnam County Board of County Commissioners unanimously agrees the red light at Cracker Swamp and 207 is a necessary project. However, the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners do not want the approval of this project to take away from funding other projects in Putnam County. That suit everybody?
Fine with me.
Okay. Okay, I'll sign it for you after. Okay, I think we were done with everything on the agenda except for commissioner requests. So we'll start with Commissioner Rawl.
I have none.
Commissioner Goddard.
I have none.
Commissioner Harvey.
I have none.
Commissioner Pickens.
I have none.
Commissioner Turner. I have none.
Chairman Turner.
With that in mind, if there's no more business to come before the board today, the meeting is adjourned.